morning and welcome to another session of Love is Patient. I'm excited. I am so excited. It's February. It's the month of love. And we have a couple things a little different. We're going to do a little different this month. You're going to be so excited. This month, we are going to be concentrating on marital love relationships. For the past sessions, I've left it open to all types of relationships. For February, we're going to concentrate on marital love relationships. Today, we're going to take a little hint from the Bible structure. 1 Corinthians 15, the love chapter, will be in the love chapter all month long, but we're going to take a little hint on the structure of 1 Corinthians. The 13th chapter, it starts out talking about the importance of love. Without love, you're like a sounding brass, a tinkling cymbal, so it's explaining and emphasizing the importance of love. And then it goes on to, of course, talk about love is patient. It's the first thing that they mention. Patience. Love is patient and love is kind. All right, those two things are paramount in any relationship, especially in the marital relationship. And then it goes on to talk about what love is not. What love is not, and that's what we're talking about today. We're going to define love by talking first about what love, in the marital relationship, what it is not. 1 Corinthians talks about love is not envious. It is not easily provoked. It thinks no evil. It does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices only in truth. And then it goes on to talk about what love is. So we're going to concentrate on the love in the marital relationship and what love is not. We're just going to talk about three things today. Love in a marital relationship, how it is not image. All right, how it is not just style and it's not just tradition. So you're going to be so excited. I have a special guest today and I can't wait. I didn't even introduce him last week, but he's here. And my special guest is my husband.
Yeah, baby. I'm here. How's everyone doing?
Good morning.
Thank
I
you.
told you I had a special guest for you. We're gonna really hone into this. We're gonna get started right away. We got a lot to talk about. And this guy right here, he got a lot to say.
No, I'm not going to say much. Listen, I'm
He got a lot
surprised.
to
I'm
say.
glad to be here. I'm glad to be here.
We're gonna jump right in. Love is not in a marital relationship. It's not just image.
It's not. It really
It's
isn't.
not just
And I
image.
think that's an amazing place to start it because one of the things when we started, we were engaged and we were talking, getting to know each other. One of the first things I said, I want to make sure that our marriage was real and that we're not trying to create an image of a marriage, but that we were actually married, that we were best friends, lovers, and partners for life. And I think that's a big deal. We didn't have all the matching outfits like a lot of couples did, and all the other fancy things that their images look better and all the things that they were saying about their marriage. But March, 24 years.
It'll be 24 years next
24 years.
My God. So in talking about image, the image is just an outer shell. It's a representation of the outer shell. And it doesn't get, an image it doesn't even touch the heart of the marriage. All right. The heart of the union can never be revealed by the image. However, image is important. The right image projected from any marriage is actually an important point. But we want to delve a little deeper and talk about the heart of the marriage. It is not just image, it's work. It's work. And we were talking earlier, and we want to touch on a couple things. We want to talk about how marriage it's trending as not being so honorable these days. So why don't you talk about a little bit about that?
That's a big thing. I think much of what's going on with the image of marriage, the heightened number of divorces, it's almost 3 times what it was back in the 70s amongst Christians. So the way in which marriage is portrayed in church, even in ministry, it's not something to be a spouse to. I recall like yesterday, one of the staples on requirements for being a pastor or minister in ministry was how was your marriage?
Mm.
In order for me to become a minister or elder, my wife had to vouch for
Yes,
what I was as a husband,
that's right.
not how well I preached or how well I prayed or how anointed I was. It was just valued in a different light, and I think that's not the trend now. That right now, it's more love over marriage, as if love and marriage are not equated. And it's very interesting how people can say they don't want to ruin or jeopardize or
Mhm.
mess up their love relationship with encumbering it with the stigmas and commitments of marriage. And it's like, whoa, wow, I've never heard that. And that's the kind of trend that's going on now.
Absolutely. And even in this pandemic,
Wow,
my God,
yes. Oh my goodness.
the divorce rates have spiked in the pandemic.
Hmm.
Wow.
Right.
Couples are spending more time together and they're
Yes.
finding that
They don't know each
they
other.
don't want,
Yeah,
and they
they
don't want to continue
don't want to
in
continue
their love relationship
be-
based on the time that they're spending now.
with each other.
Whereas before they were busy working, school, this, that, kids are busy, all of this. But when it slowed down,
And it came to the covenant of marriage. The image didn't last. See, the
Mhm.
image couldn't sustain what was in a Christmas card, what was being reflected on anniversaries, and hey, I'm with my boo, I'm with my bae, and Netflix and chill was really, well, I don't really interact with my spouse that much, and we really have that type of relationship. When we come together, we're perfect at weddings,
Mm.
we're perfect at holidays, and when we come
Showtime.
out, showtime for the
Mhm.
kids. But being home and actually knowing that person, the image wasn't able to sustain a marriage.
Good. That is an important point, and it drives it all the way home. Um, what do the trends tell us about the essence of marriage? We talked about marriage is work, is commitment.
Um, wow,
Some
I
of
think
these
so.
trends
One
tell
of the
us.
biggest things that I'm usually hearing is the whole concept of forever, being with someone forever, as if that's a punishment,
Hmm,
as if, well, I don't want to lock myself in. Like,
good.
whoa, and then
Mhm.
so the whole stigma, or the image of marriage is it being locked in, or I'm being confined, or the whole argument or discussion of the traditional roles of gender roles. No, I don't want to be confined or restricted in marriage. I want to be keep that level of fluidity, which is kind of a trending thing in sexuality now. We're seeing that sexuality trend and that gender fluidity is now coming into marriage, where for the first time ever, we're hearing discussions and dialogues of an open marriage
Yes.
and what that looks like and the benefits of that. And like, huh? Whoa, that would never be once named when we first got married or engaged.
Right. Never once. There are new definitions now.
Yes,
We're
yeah,
redefining relationships now.
yes.
And as time progresses, I mean, we're just making things up according to what our desires are.
I would say that it's almost
Mhm.
as if the in Judges, when every man did what was right in his own eyes. That's kind of what I see marriage trending. I see relationships trending, and it's almost again, it's like the word love trumps everything. So because I'm in love,
Mm-hmm.
or because I feel loved, or because of love, I'm lawless.
Yes.
I'm not
And I'm
restricted. I can do what I want. I can
Mm.
be who I want to be, and I mean, one of the biggest things that we saw with the Christian Jenner was I could be your husband and your father,
Mm.
and I can choose to become a woman. So that those dynamics of that and how the secular community has pushed that is definitely redefining it because these are some of the most popular daughters dating some of the most prominent athletes and
Mhm.
popular secular artists and things of that nature. Um, it's like, wow, your father just had a gender change. It's like, whoa. And that's now almost normative,
Yes.
almost to the extent to which more and more of what you know or I knew of marriage or requirements of or expectations of a marriage, it's almost now to the point that it's almost offensive.
Absolutely. They had to accept, you have to accept everyone's desire.
Yes.
and definition
Mhm.
of what they want to become, what is to them a love relationship. You have to accept it. Where does the buck stop? I mean, how do we define and where do we set a boundary on this type of thing? We were talking earlier about relational trends. One thing that I think has not changed, we were talking about earlier, is the desire of the woman, the desire of the woman to be married. I don't think that that has changed. However, men, as we're going on in this lawless nature, do you think that the heart of the man has changed? Way back in the day, I think it was a
Oh,
desire for
I
most
think
men to get married, start a family.
I think it's two things. I think that that was it,
Mhm.
but I also feel there was a societal push. Society pushed it as normative. There
Mhm.
was an expectation
Yeah.
that a settled man,
Mhm.
a mature man, a man of responsibility,
This is
got
what you do.
you get married.
Yes,
You
this is
don't
what
you
you do.
you definitely don't
Mhm.
stay single. And to be single past 30, 25 into your 30, 35s, you were some type of gigolo,
Mhm.
a ladies man type thing. To be in your 40s or 50s, you were definitely some type of sugar daddy. And so there was
Mhm.
all the negative connotations to that. Whereas now it is very normal to meet someone at 30 that'll tell you, "Oh, I'm still fluid in my sexuality. I'm not even sure what I am or what I want to identify today." That's kind of a normal discussion. You're
It
laughing, and
is.
that's
It
that,
is.
right?
It's
That's
very normal.
so that's a very different. And when you create a culture or societal norm where that is what's being discussed, even our children in their schools, they're taught and being taught and trained
Pronouns.
about pronouns,
Yeah.
and which of course extremely confusing to us.
Mhm.
But in being an inclusive environment and being respectful and loving, our children are having to learn the appropriate placement of pronouns, and being sensitive to their friends, to their colleagues, to their classmates. Of well, David, do you want to be a he today,
Yes.
and are you identifying as she, or are you are just neutral? So that those types of norms, those type of cultural, what do I want to say, cultural nomenclature, and the way in which it's flowing
Mhm.
is creating something where the Bible talks, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Right now, dating at 45 is not childish
Right.
for a man. It's okay to
It's
be,
accepted.
it's accepted. And I
Mhm.
can live with my mother at 35 and
Right.
40. I can live with my parents and be single. And nowhere is it frowned upon as a man, which of course is a problem because you have women that want to or desire to be married and have children, but they can't initiate it because with all of this progressive sexual
Freedom.
fluidity,
Mhm.
sexual fluidity and freedom, they still is upon the man to initiate a marriage. So I'd have to want to marry you. And I have a host of members in our church and family and friends and amazing female colleagues and sisters that preach
Yes.
and pray, and
Mhm.
wonderful businesswomen that I know of that would absolutely love to get
Make a
married
great wife.
and would make
Yes.
an amazing wife,
Mhm.
but they have no options
Right.
because that's not something that the men or people in their area are even interested in looking at now, and that's kind of a big deal.
It's a big deal, and it would explain the fact that people are getting married later. They get
Much later,
married later in life.
much later. Mhm.
Women are, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's wonderful to choose a career, get a advanced degree, enjoy your singleness. There's nothing wrong with that. Enjoying your singleness, and men as well, doing this, exploring, traveling, doing that as a single person. There's nothing wrong with that. And the trend is now, you're getting married a little later, and we're finding that it's okay to have babies just a little later.
Mm.
So that is always a concern. about our clocks ticking away, but it's been proven that you can still have babies a little later in
Mhm.
life, and there the trend is shifting. You're not seeing a lot of marriages in the early 20s anymore
No, oh
at
my goodness.
all.
And I got married
30
late.
is totally
Yeah,
acceptable,
you compare
for
consider our
marriage
parents.
these days.
Yeah, our parents got married. My dad was
Early 20s.
21. My mother was 19, and they actually had to sign for
Wow.
my mother to get married to my dad. She was still young. So yeah, that's a very different trend. And of course, when I look back on what we were doing and the age, that was kind of, you know, avant-garde. Quite few people followed and did the same, but it's just a very different shift now.
Very different time.
Mhm.
We're going to talk a little bit about the commitment of marriage. I want you to explain what we were talking about just a
Mhm.
little earlier about how marriage is memory. I thought it was such a great point to bring out. Marriage is memory. It speaks to the commitment that you sign up for, the commitment that you agree to when you marry someone. It's commitment.
Yes,
Amongst all the changes,
it's huge.
I've changed,
Oh,
you've changed,
yes.
you know,
Our
eh,
families changed. Our
our
kids have
families
changed.
changed.
Yes,
There's so many changes that have happened in the past 24 years. And
yes,
thank God we have kept up with each other, and we're
yes.
still committed.
Still
Talk a
can.
little bit about the memory. Marriage is memory.
That was a big deal.
Mhm.
The word of the Lord tells us, remember the wife of your youth.
Yes.
And I was kind of expressing that one of the things that helps and sustains and maintains a strong marriage is having a memory. You have to be able to, in different seasons and different moments, or especially challenging or growth moments, or even adjustments, you need to reframe your commitment and your covenant of marriage according to what did you agree to when you were dating?
Mhm.
What were you looking for? What were her expectations in the engagement process? And what did you go on when you first started? And then who was there when you suffered? Who was there to make the level of success that you have? Because it's easy for me to look back and talk about how amazing my children are and ignore no, she was reading to them. Your wife was reading to them, and she was nurturing them and supporting them and doing their homework. And she is the one that took the extra time to go over their homework while you were traveling, while you were preaching, while you were building business and ministry. She was home nurturing and taking care of your kids. And if you forget that and you lack that memory, the appreciation of the marriage could dissipate or dissipate
Absolutely.
in great ways because there is a requirement for memory. You have to go back and remember. You got to go back and say, wait a minute, how did I get here?
Right.
What made this happen? What was significant about my life? And then who was there that made it significant? Like, oh wow, I cannot discuss Youth Week and youth success without discussing, wow, my wife made all the meals for all the staff that came over and the volunteers that came after work while the kids were upstairs, she was downstairs cooking, helping me, taking notes, and being hospitable to my guests to make that happen.
Right.
And it's easy to forget that as you move forward, that no part of your success, part of your identity, and your growth cannot really be appreciated without remembering.
Absolutely. And although the scripture talks about remember the wife of your youth, though we have a responsibility as well as a wife to remember, the the infancy of our marriage, the beginning years of our marriage, where I remember where he went out. He was preaching in every nook and cranny
Every
in
nook.
every city
Yes.
in
Nook
in
and cranny.
Connecticut, and then branched out into Baltimore and points other points in the United States, and how although I was at the helm of the ship at home, he was bringing the money in, and how we have to remember everybody has a role in the family, and we
That's
have
good.
to remember that this is the man that's bringing the bacon home,
Yes.
that can afford for our children to be in private school. I'm reading to them, but they're in excellent and amazing schools.
Mhm.
Why? Because he brought the bacon home. Made that, he's I love that he is the priest of my home. I don't have to do much in the realm of correction in terms of the children and leadership. He doesn't lack anything in that area. He is quite a leader, and so we have to, as time progresses, we have to remember the highlights and the strengths of our spouse
Mhm.
and communicate that
Wow, that's
to
huge.
them. Communicate that to them because it is important. It's good to hear that, oh, wow, what does he appreciate about me in this stage?
Mhm.
It's good to hear what does he appreciate about me in the infancy of our marriage. That's good to hear. And just like I like to hear that, he likes to hear it too. And more so for men. More so for men because we're wired differently and they need that. They need that constant um, uh, they need that constant strength coming from us. Hey, I see you. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate all down through the years taking care of this household, allowing me to go back to school to get another degree, buying that minivan that I know you couldn't afford, but we
Wow.
scraped it up.
You scraped it
And
up. We missed the minivan.
we were having all these children, and our car was small. We needed a bigger vehicle
Memory.
for all of
Gotta have
these
memory.
children. Okay, so things like that.
Mhm. Huge. And
It's
I
huge.
think those memories
Direction,
actually help you appreciate you today.
Absolutely.
And it actually it'll also strengthen your current reality.
But we're talking about such a powerful point. Marriage is memory. Wow.
Mhm.
It's memory. And that can be a segue. If you're having a little cold moment in your marriage, it could be a wonderful segue back into a warm heart and a warm place in your marriage. Give a compliment. Take some time, during dinner or during hot chocolate with whipped cream on it by the fireplace, whatever you want to do,
Whipped
wherever
cream. Whipped
you
cream.
want to do that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
just take a moment and look back and consider something that you really appreciate about your spouse.
Mhm.
And just say a little something about that moment. Doesn't have to be a big dissertation, but that'll be a nice segue back into a good and blissful time. It's cold outside. You can cuddle up and just express those things, and it'll work out very well. Just want to make one point about managing change. Managing change. You're changing. Your spouse is changing.
Mhm.
The communication is so important during that time. If we look back and we could do some things over, I think communication would be something that we both would agree that we need to do more of in the critical stages of our marriage. More communication, more good communication,
That's
because
good.
there's all kind of communication
That's good.
going on. Good and effective communication is something that we definitely would probably
I would encourage it. And then I
do
think it's,
over again.
especially with changes, I think that change like seasons, just as you put away your
Mhm.
spring and summer clothes in the winter,
Yes.
there are certain things and seasons that you have to kind of communicate and talk with your spouse like, hey, we need to put this away. We kind of need to let this aside. We're into a new season. I know for me, I really realized a lot of what I was needing. I just knew I had to put that away.
Mhm,
It was time for you to go back to school
mhm.
and you had a baby. So I couldn't expect all of what I was expecting from you in that season when you were trying to better yourself. You had just had baby number 3.
Mhm.
You had 2 bouncing all over the place. And that season for me said I had to make way more money. I had to work a lot more hours and I had to cook more. And I'd have to watch the kids a significant amount of time to give you that balance while they were still all in daycare. When I made that choice, I know in this season, I'm going to have to not. I'm going to have to not get off the hook. I'm not going to be able to just retreat into work or into ministry. I'm really going to have to kind of handle a lot more because it's a different season. And I think that's
Absolutely.
kind of communicating that in a way, what you did, like only you could, like, hey, I enjoyed engineering. I want to teach now. I want to be home more with my kids. I'm in a different season. I'm not career oriented anymore. I really want to be able to be home with my children more, and teaching allows me that because I still want to work. Of course, I was saying, "Oh, well, don't work, just stay home." You're like, "No, I still want to work, but I want my schedule to reflect that of my kids." And that was a very different season. And again, it was communicated. It
Right.
was way, and it was a wake up call for me to know of an expectation. I think that's kind of one of the most damaging things in relationships when you don't communicate right.
Mhm.
The transition is difficult,
Absolutely.
and it seems overwhelming. Or many times I felt the frustration of your season affecting me, and I had to say, well, no, be fair, because when you're traveling, in your season of traveling, she has to do more, and this is what it feels like, which again gave me a sensitivity I never had.
It's a give and take.
Yeah, it
It's
really
a
was.
give and take. There have been times when, I've had to take the helm of the ship when the cathedral was being built.
Oh my God.
You
Built,
remember that?
building, finished,
Yes.
defended, and all the other.
My
Yeah,
goodness.
it's huge
So
because
that
that was
is a
oh my
time.
goodness.
How dare I expect him to be cooking, to be home for me when this project was so much
Ah,
in the forefront. He was helping his dad. This was a place in ministry that he wanted. It was like a place where you had dreamed of being the right hand man to your dad,
oh my God.
building this cathedral, his dream. How dare I come in between that? So it's a give and take, a give and take, always a give and take. Unless to agree, though, you have to communicate and then
Well,
you have to agree.
yeah.
And when things get rough, we were talking about this the other day, when things get rough, wow, if you pulled out too soon, if you gave up too soon, you would negate the whole process.
Right.
And sometimes I think in this marriage life, we get so frustrated for whatever reason, and we have to be careful that we don't pull out and abort the process too soon.
Wow, that's big. And I can look at relationships and marriages that we both know
Yes.
one or the other gave up too early
Mhm.
and quit. And a marriage takes two. It definitely does. And one of the things that my father always shared, and I share in every wedding, is the mathematics of a wedding, of a marriage rather.
Mm,
It's not
that's
50-50.
right.
Sometimes it's 60
Mhm.
40, 70 30, 20 80, 90 10. And more often than not, and it's not really discussed, it's 100 to 0. And that's,
Yes.
again, goes back to our discussion of image. Like a lot goes wrong in marriages because people walk in it with their preconceived notion of what a marriage looks like, not knowing that no, you can be fully loved and be doing 100% of keeping the marriage together. Like, wow, because that's the season that
That's
you're
the
in.
season.
That's the season.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Love is Patient, huh?
Yes,
You've
ma'am.
been living it.
Yes,
We've been
ma'am.
living Love is
Yes, ma'am. And I've been
Patient.
obeying, and I've been subscribing and liking.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. You see that?
This is great.
You see that?
This is great.
Okay.
Support.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. The next thing that we wanted to talk about was style. Style is the manner, the way of doing something, the way you operate. So as we unpack that, we were talking about the different stages of how we were operating in our marriage. We came into the door. I was in corporate, traveling as an engineer. Um, he was
Making big money,
making bigger money. Yeah,
a whole lot of money,
probably bigger than now.
way bigger.
But anyway,
Yes,
and he was a Yale student.
broke.
Yale student with a big bright future.
Yes, and big loans,
Big loans
Yes,
and
but
big
that's what-
potential.
and a Hyundai Sonata.
Yes.
I was a ball of potential.
Yes. So
Um, Yes.
That was the beginning. That's how we operated
Oh,
in
Jesus.
the beginning stages. We were dating all through the marriage, all through the beginning stages of the marriage,
Wow.
surprising each other
Mhm.
and, enjoying ourselves. And then, woohoo! We want this big family. How many did we agree to? I agreed to
I wanted
6
10.
children.
I wanted 10. We agreed to 6.
We agreed to 6.
I already had 1, so it was going to be 7.
Yeah.
And the agreement was 7. They were like, wow, we're going to have.
I don't remember that, but I'll go with it.
So we were like, yeah, there's going to be a total of 7. Of course, I snuck another one in again. And we were rounding the corner with Simone. And I remember how long the spacing between that. And the styles weren't the style. It just wasn't the way in which we were doing it. We realized then, like, ooh, this won't work with 6 children.
Mhm.
And I just had my heart bent on a big family. I really wanted a bunch of kids, a bunch of children. And I began to see what was going on in my life, ministry-wise, money-wise, time-wise,
Mhm.
how it was affecting you. And like, okay, well, yeah, I guess this will be the last one. Simone would be it. And that was a big deal for us. And then, of course, styles, like you say, the way in which you interact, the way you do something. I'm the alpha male. I'm taking all the risk. And you're sitting up saying, yeah, that's nice, but I like stability.
Mhm.
I like to know what's going on and how it's going to work. And it was a big adjustment, I think, for me in many ways. And I really had to let go of dreams. I had to let go of some things that I knew, is that what God said? Is that what He wants for you?
Mhm.
Or again,
Your
are you
desire.
into an image that you saw again with the Richardsons?
Mhm.
That I just loved this big family across the street, that this guy worked forever and he had a freezer downstairs. We had 1 refrigerator in our house. They had 3, a refrigerator and 2 freezers. And I thought Mr. Richardson was the richest man in the world. And they had the best family. They had all these rules that the kids made. They self-governed themselves with this amazing mother, Mrs. Richardson. And he had a refrigerator just for bread. That's how much bread they ate. And then another one just for meat. And meanwhile, I'm across the street trying to figure out why my dad did not have enough Wonder Bread and why we kept running out of milk. Right? This guy has. So of course I was into that image, and that I kind of walked into that, still in that, realizing like this style is not going to suit our marriage.
Yes, and I had that same idea in mind. I grew up the only child, although I have 2 sisters, 2 half sisters. I grew up the only child. So I came into this marriage like, let's go. I want a big family too. But as time progressed and as we started to weigh out everything that the Lord did bless us with, 4 healthy children, living and breathing and very bright and very active,
extremely
and,
expensive,
and expensive, yes.
very gifted.
And the time that it takes to mold just one mind. And we
Dominique,
have 4 minds to mold.
Then
it was
the
more than
Kayla
enough.
spirit, then the Shaka spirit, then the Simone.
Yes, it's more than enough.
More than enough. They overwhelmed us. They overwhelmed me in a way that I realized it's going to take you a lifetime to love them right.
Absolutely.
You add another 2 or 3 kids to this, you're already not around. Yeah, you're going to tilt because you're again style. You're already traveling. You're already on the road. You're already doing ministry. You got this other business you're trying to run at Cream.
Right.
Like how's that going to really work
effectively?
And you keep your wife and you keep your marriage.
Absolutely.
And it's not something's going to lose. Yeah.
So this style, this mode of operation through all of the different modes of operation that we have been through. What is our takeaway? Through each stage, we have to make sure that
we obey Ina. And
Yes,
every
that's
stage.
cute. That's
you
really
like
cute.
that? You like
That's really cute.
I think the takeaway is love Jesus and obey Ina. And then you're good. It all works out, and the rest of it, no? Okay.
It probably would have, but
No,
that's another story.
No, I think the takeaway would be each relationship has to align itself with God's assignment for the two of you.
Absolutely.
And I think that kind of gives you the right space to start.
Beautifully put.
And giving him the authority to manage your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a husband submitting to what God has for that marriage. And then what God is doing through me affects how you're going to respond and make this marriage something that you could help. Like, oh, I can help this because I'm following you as I'm following God.
Mm-hmm.
As you're following God, like, okay, this makes sense. And it runs all the way down to the children. So I think the takeaway is just aligning your marriage with what God has.
That's it.
Starting up scripture and the purpose of it. And
what's
then
the purpose of us
Yeah.
being together?
Yes.
Each stage should align with that purpose. And I think if we, in hindsight, looking back, if we could have taken the time to really manage that a little better and to align all of these different stages with God's purpose, I think a lot of the frustration would have been eliminated. At least the frustration part.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
It wouldn't have been easier, but
No,
I think the frustration level.
I think the Bible says yoke is easy, burden is light.
Mm-hmm.
I think that to whom much is given, much is required, and marriage is a lot. He that findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtaineth favor with God.
Yes.
So you can't obtain favor with God and know that to whom much is given, much is required. Then come back and say, God, this is too much. Yeah. It's like, well, I could take away the marriage. I could take away the kids. You have 4. You want me to take 2 back? You want me to take 1 away? I mean, how do you view that? And I think those are things, honestly, if I go back and I see that and try to recalibrate everything, I would dare to say, if my mindset would have not been so anxious for things to make sure we had this or had that, or was pushing something and rather just gave it time. The rush, yeah. And I think much of that has to do with the expectation that others had upon our marriage, what they had upon me, that I should have just said, hey, that's not my responsibility to meet up to your image of our marriage or me. What is God saying I need to be doing? I think that would have changed our marriage, this church, the ministry, the trajectory of everything that's going on now would have all altered just being in the will of God, in the ease of wait for it, wait for that season, as opposed to the image of it.
Absolutely. And then that also gives way to the discussion of the two becoming one, our personalities meshing together to make that moment one that is most effective and that is aligned with God's will. You are a very outgoing person. You want to get things done. You are driven.
Bob the Builder.
Bob the Builder. I'm more calculated. I want to analyze everything. Is this the right way to go? And if you think about it, it's a perfect mix if we would allow for the process to really work.
The word is if.
It's a perfect
it really
mix,
is.
Yes.
And it's not it can't. It's an if. And that would be my takeaway, kind of close out or segue out of the session to say, hey, give yourselves space for the if.
Yes.
What if I don't do it my way? What if
contingencies? Yeah.
If I just step back a little bit and allow the extra set of questions, which doesn't mean you're against or you're opposing or you're not supporting or you're doubting. More so, no, I'm calculating it. I'm the same way you calibrated and measured the oven at Pepperidge Farm, and they hired you for that and recruited you for that. That's the same level of specificity and engineering that has been essential to our family success and where we are, and learning over time, being comfortable enough with that to say if. And I think that's to the women, I challenge you. Men, of course, are pushed to do that. I would encourage, especially those women that are watching now, what if you just let him be lost? And rather than be angry and argue about he missed the left, What if he runs out of gas? What if it doesn't happen the way he said it would after you've advised? What did you really lose? More so than just backing up and giving space for that if to let the other person, the two become one. And of course, it is very easily understood in the concept of sex, the two become one. But how do the two become one in finances? How do the two become one in our ability to manage moments? How do the two become one in raising children? How do the two become one in cooking, in sharing in chores? I think all of that becomes the if now.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing and providing your perspective today. I loved it.
Thank you for letting
me
come.
You're an amazing co-host. I don't know.
I appreciate the time.
I think I'm going to bring you back next week.
If you allow me to come out the house,
yes, I would love for you to come back next week. Join us next week where we're going to talk about more about marriage relationships, the marital relationships. Love is patient in the marital relationships. Good. Why don't you pray us out really quickly?
Sure. Let's pray. Kind Eternal Father, thank you for these that have come to share and gather. Be with us as we celebrate your grace and your mercy upon all of us in our marriage. We honor you for life. Thank you for every family, every individual that is being part of this. And we pray now during this Black History Month that your love would emanate through our history, that we'll be able to celebrate the achievements of those both past and present, and allow in one way or another the words that we've shared to be the catalyst to the love that you desired in the oldest institution, that being marriage. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you again for joining us. Join us next week where we're going to come together and talk more about this same thing. Love is patient. Remember that. Wait for love, and you're going to get that chance to love. Wait for love. Love is patient.